Greetings and salutation to our invisible audience, and a lot of alohas from Hawaii. The question is, what part can an infinite way worker play in his church life? I don't know actually that he can play any. I don't believe that any church worker should attempt to carry the message of the infinite way into his church. Always remember that the basis of Christian living is do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And as you do not want anyone coming to you and trying to sell you some religion or philosophy, not of your own choosing, please remember that neither does the rest of the world. Everybody should have the privilege of selecting their own religion and of remaining with it until they're dissatisfied, and then going out freely and seeking whatever else they will until they find it. As anyone comes to you saying, evidence in your life shows that you have something, will you share it with me? That is your opportunity to do unto them as you would have them do unto you. Share it, and share it as liberally as they can accept it, but surely don't try to sell it to them. Don't try to force it on anyone. Don't try to advertise it, because religion is not taken that way. Religion is never imposed upon anyone. It is sought from within. You must remember this, those of you who have followed metaphysical work of any kind through the years have undoubtedly had members of your family come to you during some illness and say, now you really ought to go to a doctor, you really ought to go to a hospital. Now why don't you just let me give you my favorite medicine? And I know what your answer is. Your answer is, no, I'm practicing a metaphysical faith, and please let me alone to work it out. If you don't say that, you feel it and want to say it. Well, it is exactly the same way. If a person is working their life out with materia medica, or they're working it out with orthodox religion, or they're working it out with no religion, please have the good grace to let them work out their own lives until they seek you out. Then share, and even then only in the degree of their seeking. Otherwise, do not carry it in. I have as much opportunity as anyone for introducing this subject into churches, because so very often I receive calls from ministers, from rabbis, and on one occasion a priest, for some information about the infinite way. And you can be assured that I'm very, very glad to give it. I'm very glad to share with them, to spend hours and hours and hours. But I don't go back until I'm sent for. And when I'm there, I never urge it on them. I merely state what the infinite way is, since that is what they send for. I have no desire to take anyone out of their beliefs or convictions. Let them come out as they are ready, or remain in it, if that is their wish and will. We have had in this work opportunities to explain the work to medical men and to nurses. We have had the opportunity of watching it as it was used here and there in a hospital. But that's all right, because the desire for it came from those who are trying it. In no wise were they asked to try it, nor was it urged on them. And so it is really the most Christian thing in the world to leave everyone to their own way of seeking and welcome every sincere seeker. And more especially in this country, the United States is given the right of freedom of religion and the freedom to have no religion. And so all we have to do is respect our Constitution and leave everybody alone. Well, now let us see. I wanted to come back for a few minutes to that subject of healing. We're never going to get away from that subject of healing until the time comes when there's nobody left even to believe that they're unhealed. There is only one way in which you are going to develop any ability in healing work at all, and that is practicing it. I could talk about it in either lectures or classes for as many years as God gives me the grace to do it. But that will not make a healer of you. It will not even help you enough to do the slightest healing work for yourself or others. There is no substitute for your individual study and practice. Now, the healing work itself is not difficult. It is not nearly as difficult as it seems to be, because there is one major point that everyone must see. And so we have to begin the training of ourselves, first of all, on that point. And if we do not accomplish that point, we will not go on to the second step, or third, or fourth. Now, the very first and most important point is this: that everyone must realize that regardless of the name or nature of the claim, call it disease or sin, the first thing that you must remember is that it is not a condition that you have to pray about to have removed. It is not a condition that you're seeking God to do something about. It is not a condition that must be destroyed or overcome or risen above. It is an appearance, or it is a temptation, or it is a claim, and when you have fastened yourself to one of those three names, then you can go on to the second step. Remember this: you cannot meet an error on the level of the error. In other words, you cannot meet a thing by battling it. In other words, if someone says, I have a cold, you cannot win out over it by treating a cold. The moment you have treated a cold or treated a person with a cold, you have become the blind leading the blind, and there will be no healing. And so if the claim is presented to you as being a cold, first of all, translate it and realize, no, I'm not dealing either with a cold or with a person who has a cold. I'm merely dealing with a temptation or an appearance. Get that straight in your thought, and already you will have 90% of your healing work done, just by that translation from condition to appearance, claim, or temptation. Now, you know what the appearance is, don't you? It's an appearance of a selfhood or a condition apart from God. You know what the temptation is? The temptation is to believe in a selfhood apart from God, or an activity apart from God, or a condition apart from God. You know what the claim is? That there is a mortal or that there is a disease, or that disease has a law. That's what you're faced with. Now, at first you say, I can do that if a stranger comes to me, but not if a member of my own family or myself. You can only answer that in that way if you have not caught this point about the fact that you're never dealing with a member of your family. You're never dealing with a friend. You're dealing with a claim or an appearance or a temptation. Do you see how subtle this is? That in some way or other you're tempted to bring a person into your treatment and say one person isn't my relative, but the other one is my own child. We're not dealing with a relative. We're not dealing with a friend. We're not dealing with your child. We are dealing with a temptation to believe in a selfhood apart from God. We are dealing with an appearance of something apart from God. We are dealing with a claim. We're not dealing with a person. And that is why the young student says, oh, I can take care of a simple cold or indigestion, but I don't want any cancer cases. We are not dealing with disease. We are not doctors. We are not diagnosticians. We know nothing about the name of a disease or the symptom of a disease. We are not dealing with disease, nor are we healing disease. We are dealing with an appearance of a selfhood apart from God, or a temptation to believe in a law or activity or power apart from God. That's what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with people. We're not dealing with diseases. In the earliest days of metaphysical practice, when both the church and the medical movement were trying to prevent the practice of metaphysics, the claim was brought up that doctors study for 7 years or 10 years and serve long apprenticeships and only then begin to know something about it. How can a metaphysician who only studies 6 months start to know what a doctor knows? Well, of course they don't know what a doctor knows. A doctor is supposed to know the body and the nature of disease and the remedy for disease, and a doctor couldn't be a doctor if they didn't, because they're dealing with disease and people who have disease, but we are not. We are not doctors. We are not physicians. We do not treat from the standpoint even of claiming to be physicians. Our claim is, our whole standpoint is, that we're never dealing with a person. That's why we never put our finger on a person. Never do we attempt to diagnose. Never do we ask them any questions about their claims. Because we're not doctors. We wouldn't know what to do with it. If they came to us with a doctor's diagnosis and showed us in plain black and white what was wrong, we wouldn't know what to do with it. We are not doctors. Ours is a ministry in which we understand, at least our principle is, that God is the law, substance, activity of all being, of everybody, and of everybody's body, all being, all form. And therefore, that what the world calls sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, exist only as appearances of a selfhood apart from God, or a temptation to accept an appearance as if it were a reality. Now, if you catch that, even in the slightest degree, you will never be concerned about the name of a patient or the name of a disease. Nor will you ever go looking for a cause for the disease, whether it's a physical cause or a mental cause, because if you find it, you won't know what to do with it. How many of you have been to practitioners who have said over and over, oh, I know what's wrong with you. Oh, if only you would do this, or only if you would think this. After they have found out what's wrong with you, they don't know what to do with it. So now it becomes up to you to do something about it. And yet you're not the metaphysician, you're the patient. No, that's all wrong. In a psychological approach to life, you must make some change in your thinking, in your conduct. In a spiritual approach to life, you do not concern yourself with those things. You concern yourself with becoming acquainted with God. Acquaint now thyself with Him, and be at peace. To know Him aright is life eternal. Our work is to come to the actual experience of God, to have an actual God experience, to have an actual consciousness, a feel of the presence of God, and then let it do the work. Now, how it works, we don't know. We only know the effect of how it works. In other words, there is a condition, or the appearance of a condition today, and tomorrow it's gone, or next week. That's all we know. No metaphysician has ever been able to trace the activity of spirit and understand how it works in you. No one has ever done that. I don't know what takes place after I have felt that click within. I haven't the faintest idea what takes place in you, except that sooner or later I get a call and say I feel better, or the fever is gone, or the blister is gone, or the pain is gone, or something of that kind. But I couldn't explain it to you. No one else can. Now, if you grasp the point that we are dealing not with a person and not with a disease, but that to start with, we have a claim, we have an appearance, we have a temptation to believe in a selfhood apart from God. Then you go on to the next step, and that becomes easy because by then some inner light comes that shows you what the next step is and how to take it. For instance, a businessman will call you or come to you and will want some help on a business problem. Now please remember this, you don't even know what his business is. And if you knew very much about it, he'd probably want to hire you anyhow. But you don't know anything about his business. And yet he has come to you and asked you for help in his business, a business about which you know nothing. Now just imagine what would happen if you started to give him advice, or if you started to diagnose his business, or to give him a remedy for it. But he knows more about his business than you and I will ever know. And yet you can be a big help to him in his business. How? Well, the first thing that would come to you as you would sit quietly is this. Now this has nothing to do with a person. This has nothing to do with a group of people. This has nothing to do with a stock of merchandise. What has it to do with? Well, all these things. The person who came to me and all the other people involved, all the merchandise involved, or ideas or plans, that all has nothing to do with me. Why have I been asked for help? Because to some extent I have become acquainted with God. Oh, I have I, huh? Well, what do I know about God? One thing I know about God is that God is the one and only mind, the universal mind, and the nature of that mind is love, wisdom, intelligence. I know that that mind embraces within itself only good, and in that mind there's no opposition to that good, none whatsoever, because mind embraces within itself no opposition to itself. And all that's taking place in this business is the activity of a divine mind, a universal mind, a cosmic mind. Nothing is going on in this mind except the business of mind's expressing itself. It's the only business there is. Mind creating in its own image and likeness, mind governing with spiritual law, mind establishing, he performeth that which is given me to do. Why, the whole of this business is really God governing itself, expressing itself, God being about its own business. You wouldn't be with that idea very long until an inner assurance would come to you that that's absolutely true, that no business can be interfered with by any power apart from God, since there isn't any power apart from God. Very quickly it would come back to you that one of the basic premises of the infinite way is that there are not two powers in the world, one working against the other. And there is no evil power for the good power to overcome. There is no power in this divine mind, in this universal mind, but the power of God. And so in this whole of God's creation, we find no opposition to truth, to life, to love, to harmony, to justice, mercy, equity. There is no such thing. None of this exists. The infinity of God makes it impossible for there to be any activity going on in anybody's business except the activity of life, truth, love, harmony, peace, joy. And then would come this feeling of peace, well-being. It is done. And then it would only be a matter of the right time, and the answer would come, yes, it is done. All is well. Or it may be that the adjustment hasn't taken place in consciousness that will bring the thing to its light, and you may have to work or continue on into next week or next month, or wait for the next experience to come up, because everything doesn't go just the minute you and I think it should go. There are many reasons often why that cannot be. But as often as the business proposition is presented to you, just so often do you realize, I'm not dealing with people. I'm not dealing with honest people or dishonest people. I'm not dealing with good people or bad people. I am dealing with God as the creator of this business, God as the owner of this business, God as the employee of this business, God as the banker of this business, God as the all-in-all of this business, and I acknowledge no other presence and no other power. And you stand there sometimes in the face of very distressing appearances to the contrary, until the situation yields and then harmony quickly appears. All right? This is true of business. This is true of body. This is true of health. This is true of employment. Regardless of the nature of the claim that is brought to you, something physical, mental, moral, financial, you must quickly understand that you are not to try to reform anybody in the picture, or heal anybody in the picture, or remove anybody in the picture. None of those things are your function. Your realization of God as the only presence, as the only power, as the only being, that truth will remove all obstacles, even if that obstacle is a person. But don't ever you attempt to remove a person. Don't you ever attempt to remove anything or anybody, because you will only bring the two-edged sword back upon yourself. Your function is to agree with your adversary and never fight a person, never fight a condition. This battle isn't yours, but God's, truth's. You be sure that you turn from the appearance to the realization of God, and then you will have it. Now, when you do all this, remember also not to conclude your treatment until you have also taken a few minutes after thinking these things out to wait and give God the opportunity to put the seal on the treatment. That is, to give you the assurance all is well, to give you the feeling of peace be still within you. Then when that comes, you can really drop the situation and go on about your business. Now, I say that to you, and you will have opportunity to hear it, but the great need is going to be for you to practice it until this mode and means, this method, becomes a very part of your system. It doesn't make any difference if you fail for a while. Please don't be the type of person who always has to succeed. Don't do it. Just forget about succeeding and do the best you can, because no one will ever get into trouble asking you for help. God doesn't work that way. And if you can't give it, they soon will be led to somebody else. You work, pray, treat upon every occasion, and keep yourself immersed in truth. And as time passes, you will find this principle becoming so embedded in you that no matter what is ever asked of you, you'll never permit your thought to come down here to person or the name of a disease or so forth and so on. And you'll recognize immediately that was just a temptation, and that itself will comprise most of your treatment. Now, inasmuch as we have been through this class together, and some of you through other classes, I would like to add this. And this goes and is meant not only for you here in sound of my voice, but all who will be hearing it on these recordings. Please remember this, that there is only one function I serve in your life. Well, we'll call it two functions. One, to help you insofar as I can with your individual problems, but a much more important one is lead you to where you can work out your own salvation and that of others. And so, it is my pleasure if you write me, if you keep in touch with me, if you let me help you while you are doing this practicing and studying. Let me guide you. A class doesn't end tonight. No class that we have ever held has ever ended, because there isn't anybody that's ever been in a class that hasn't access to me, whether by mail or cable or telephone, or if it's possible for me to have the time, in person. Because that's my function in the infinite way. First of all, to help as many as I can with their problems, to show forth the principle to them, then to help them imbibe the principle so that they can go and do likewise, not only for themselves, but some for their neighbors and some as world lecturers or practitioners or teachers. All of that is within you. So far as I'm concerned, I have to open so many letters every day and answer them. And I have to give help to those who do it, and I would just as well be well pleased if it is you as if it is you. So everyone has access to me. As far as it lies within my power, I will be glad to help you in your practicing. Don't feel that because tonight ends the class, that ends my cooperation with you, because that isn't true. No one who has ever worked with me has ever found that I wasn't available to them in one way or another to help them. And helping them with their individual problems is to show forth this principle. But it is only the first step. And the next one is to help you to where you can be the practitioner for yourself, family, community, or the world at large. And so I'm repeating that feel free to write me, cable, telephone, anything you like. And if it's possible to be with you in person, I will be, because I love to know My whole heart and soul is a knowing that one of these days the world is going to be filled, so filled with a conscious realization of the presence of God, that all darkness, all evil, all error will be dispelled just by the very presence of man. You see, the great secret of life is this, that God is incarnated in you. God is manifest in you. There is just as much of God when you stand or sit here as there is if the heavens could open and a God itself come into us. God is in the midst of us. The place whereon you stand is holy ground. If that were not true, Jesus couldn't have healed, the disciples couldn't have healed, the apostles couldn't have healed, all of the Christian Science practitioners who have healed couldn't have healed, all the Unity students who have healed could never have healed. It is only because the very Spirit of God itself is in you, is manifest as your very being, that God has incarnated itself as our very soul and mind and spirit and being. We are divinity. We are evident divinity. God in its essence is invisible. God in its expression is visible as you and as me. And there isn't any reason why everywhere you go that love shouldn't be before you to be felt by all who touch you. Everyone who comes into your presence should feel love, should feel life, should feel comfort. The Master said, I will send the Comforter to you. Well, the Comforter has come. The Comforter is right now within your being. The Comforter is your divine state of consciousness. The Comforter is that area of your consciousness that we call the Christ. The Comforter, the Spirit of truth, the Savior, the Healer, the Divine Healer, the Messiah, all of this is in you. Once upon a time, in days of old, the Hebrews thought that Messiah was a man. But the man whom they thought was Messiah said, before Abraham was, I am. So it couldn't have been a man who had a birth date, and a very recent one, when those words were spoken. No, Messiah is the Spirit of God in man. And the Hebrews who prophesied the coming of Messiah were absolutely correct, except that they put it in time and space. The Messiah doesn't come to you in time or space. The Messiah comes to you in consciousness, and it comes at that moment when you recognize it. Now, when you recognize the presence of the Spirit of God in you, the Christ has been born. Never external to you, always within you. But its effect is external, because the moment you come near a cat or a dog or a bird, it feels you. The very moment you come near a man or a woman with the least degree of spiritual capacity, they can feel it in you. They know it in you. Now, what is it that they feel? Is it any part of your body? No. Is it any part of your brain? No. It is a part of your consciousness. It is your very consciousness of truth itself that is felt. Now, the day will come when we will be consciously so full of the presence of the Spirit of God that wherever we go, our Christhood will be felt. Our very touch of the finger will be a healing touch. And if we don't touch with the finger, the very fact that our consciousness rests on an individual will be the healing touch. Our personal company or companionship will be a blessing wherever we move. But even if we aren't physically present, the memory of us or remembrance of us or consciousness of us will be a healing influence. Why? Because of our bodies? Because of our brains? No. Because of something that has taken place within our consciousness at the moment we realized that God has incarnated itself in us, that actually we are the Son of God, the Christ of God, the very Spirit of God in expression. The moment we know that, and we only know that, remember, when we no longer fear each other, hate each other, compete with each other, when we no longer know envy, jealousy. Not that we can get rid of those if we have them, but the Christ can rid us of them. And when it does, then the Christhood is in full bloom. Oh, pray for a minute, will you? There it is. Prayer successfully answered. This was in today's paper. This is written, it says, by an anonymous Confederate soldier almost 100 years ago. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything that I had hoped for. Almost despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered. I am among all men most richly blessed. And you see, that is what I mean when I say that when the Christ is realized in consciousness, it does not necessarily fulfill itself in the way that we would like to be fulfilled. Not always according to the pattern that we have drawn of success or happiness, but it fulfills itself in accord with its own idea of what? Love is the fulfilling of the law. Service to God and service to man. The love of our neighbor. The love of our enemy. The Christ fulfills itself in the change of a spirit. And our human self then is so transformed that we no longer recognize ourselves as the person who is busy competing or using human tricks for getting ahead, or feeling that a certain amount of this, that, or the other thing was necessary. No. What has happened is this, that when we realize this Christ, we no longer have desires of a human nature. We have nothing of a human nature that needs fulfillment. The only desire that is left is a spiritual sense, a desire or a love for the Spirit that insists on being fulfilled inwardly. It is a very practical thing because it brings to us every type of joy in the outer realm and every type of abundant good, but not always in the form that we now in our humanhood consider good. The things that we now might consider would bring us the greatest happiness if we accomplish them might be our undoing. It has happened before. Men like Napoleon got all the things they hoped to get, and so did Hitler, and a few other whose names are just as well known. They got all the things their ambition set out for them to get, and they ended with destruction. When this other spirit comes, there is no desire for things in the outer realm, and that is why when we meet people, they instinctively have a feeling of being drawn to us because there's nothing in us pulling on them. There's nothing in us trying to get something from them, draw something out of them. If there's any feeling at all, it is in the joy that we would get if we could give them something. That is what happens with this Christ. There's nothing that anyone has that you can possibly want, because whatever it is that we have real need of, the Christ is fulfilling in us, without any need for turning to a person, without any need for drawing on a person. Whatever comes, comes of its own free will. Whatever comes, comes through the fulfilling of the law, which is love. I have said this somewhere in the writings, that no one has ever been touched with the Christ and ever again had any need to be concerned about their supply, whether it was money supply or friendship supply or home supply or any other type of supply, because that degree, even a tiny degree of the Christhood, fulfilled it. And so the individual never again had to take thought for what they should eat or what they should drink or wherewithal they shall be clothed. Well, you feel that instinctively when you come into the presence of a person that already has and isn't looking to you, and you can also feel when you come into the presence of a person who in any way is looking at you in a sense of wanting, desiring, hoping, competing, fearing, envying, you feel it. Now, human consciousness is made up entirely of wanting, desiring. That's why so many billions of people know how to pray. They think they do. They know the things they want, and if they don't get it in their ordinary human ways, then they'll pray for it. But the day will come to every individual that as the Christ touches it, they have nothing left to pray for. All things appear. All things happen. You wake up in the morning and automatically every part of the day is fulfilled, and there's nothing left to pray for. And that is the day of rejoicing. That must be the day of rejoicing, and that will be the day of the fulfillment of this world, when there is nothing left to pray for. Prayer, in its ordinary form, is a sin, because it is a desire. And not only it is a desire, but it is an outlining of what one thinks will be good for one. It is a sin because it is not a relaxing and a trusting that that which is the divine consciousness knows our need. Ultimately, when you catch the correct concept of prayer and understand that prayer is communion, that it is just an inner resting in God, an inner conscious union, an inner joy in God, then you'll more nearly understand why prayer has nothing to do with a desire. Prayer has only to do with an acknowledgement, with a realization, with a feeling of freedom, of joy, of peace. Now, if we are told never again pray for anything, it may seem like a very difficult formula to follow. It isn't, if you'll remember this, that every time you resist the temptation to pray for something, you are praying. That is true prayer. Every time you resist the desire to ask for anything, seek anything, long for anything, wish for anything, you are praying. Why? You are acknowledging the presence of God as the all-knowing mind who already knows what things you have need of. You are acknowledging that the love of God is your sufficiency. That beside the love of God you need nothing, and the love of God you have. Just think of that. If only we were sure of one thing, and that is that we have the love of God, that we are enfolded in the love of God. If we only could realize that we live and move and have our being in God, how then could we pray for anything? And then it becomes easy to resist the temptation to pray for anything. Why? Temptation comes along and says, we need this and we need that, but truth comes along and says, how can that be if God is fulfillment? If God knoweth my need before I do? No, and then you resist that temptation to pray, and you have prayed because you have communed with God. You have acknowledged him in all thy ways, and then he will give thee rest. That is the message tonight. Resist this temptation to pray for something. Resist the temptation to treat for something. And when you're called upon to treat, turn from the appearance and just reach out to God and let God give the treatment. Let God pray in you and through you. Let the Spirit of God bear witness with your spirit. Let the Spirit of God make intercession. You be the listener or the beholder. This next point is without question the most difficult to attain in all mystical living. And yet, to enter into the mystic life, this must be accomplished. And that is the ability to sit in the silence without thought. Not by stopping thought, not by making an effort to stop thought, but by getting into such a peace, such a peaceful communion with God that thought stops. And that only begins when one has accomplished the first step, having no thing to pray for. A moment we have come to a place where we will acknowledge there is nothing left to pray for. I have God. I have the Spirit of God. God is my soul, my being, my Father, the Father within me. I and the Father are one. I am heir to the heavenly riches. So I have all. And the moment you come to the realization that I have all, then you're enabled to sit. And here is that secret. The divine mind, or cosmic mind, is an infinite intelligence imbued with love. And it functions as our being the moment that conscious thinking has been stilled. For instance, if you were driving your car and ordinarily you came to this corner and were going to turn to the left, but you were just sitting there driving, not thinking about turning to the left, and automatically found yourself turning off to the right and going up another street, you say, well, that's a strange thing. That was my way. And then as you got around this corner, you found, or got to your destination, you found that that left way was blocked and that you couldn't have gotten through even if you had turned that way. And then, if you're a thinker, you'll stop and ask why. How did that happen? You won't be satisfied just with the word intuition. You'll really want to know what happened. and you find that you weren't consciously thinking of turning to the left. You were just driving your car, and because you weren't thinking in that way, the cosmic, the divine, the all-knowing mind was able to say to you, go this way. So it is in every walk of life. You may have this in mind, but it has this, but you'll never know this as long as you're busy thinking, planning, routining, keeping this thing active, listening to radios and televisions and all the external extractions. You never will receive the divine grace of cosmic mind, of cosmic intelligence. There must be periods of quiet for the mind. That doesn't mean that all day long you'll be a blank, but it means that throughout the day and throughout the night you will have those periods when you have no desires and you have no demonstration to make. You have only this joy in an inner communion, and then in that complete stillness, the Father takes over. That is what the Master meant when he said, the Father within me doeth the works. But look how much meditating he did. Look how much silence he went into. Look how much communing he did. And in all of that, you can be assured that he wasn't talking to God, he was listening to God. He wasn't asking God for anything. He was listening for God's direction and instruction and support. And so it is. There must come about a transformation from the habit of continuously thinking to the habit of continuously listening. That is the transformation that must be made before one can enter into the mystical or cosmic life. Now, never forget this. Cosmic life does not always mean religious life. For instance, every composer, every author, every inventor, every designer, every architect of any note, any builder of unusual things, has touched the cosmic. In other words, they are taught by something within their own being. That could never happen if they didn't know periods of silence, periods of listening. Now, that may not always lead them along the religious life. The cosmic doesn't always send one along the religious life. It may bring them, it may open to them the world of music, art, literature, science, building, painting, sculpting, all the rest of these things. And that will come because of this innate ability to be still inside, to listen, to hear, to receive cosmic or universal impulses. But when this cosmic touches the religious life, then it is called the mystical life. Then it is called the mystical life for this reason. The word mysticism means a teaching or religion which believes in conscious union with God, with the ability to receive direct contact with God, to receive answers to prayer. Now that is the meaning of mysticism. And a mystic is an individual who has touched God at some time or other, or is in constant communion with God, who receives all of his moral and ethical impulses from God. You see, a mystic doesn't always become an engineer or a builder. A mystic usually is attuned to the religious, ethical, and moral life, and then might show it forth in writing or poetry or painting, like Blake or Wilde or others of Emerson, Whitman. But there are those who have attuned to the cosmic mind without the religious sense, and they have brought forth the great works on the human plane. Until recently, Einstein had not brought forth much in the way of religious works. He was attuned principally to the mathematical and scientific world. Then all of a sudden, he touched in or tuned in on not only the cosmic, but the mystical end of the cosmic, which is the religious sense. And now he comes to the place where he acknowledges that nothing can be accomplished until you've gone beyond the range of the thinking mind. And so it is that many people have been attuned to the cosmic and yet not to the religious, the moral and the ethical side of it. But if we are to understand and live this mystical life, which means conscious communion with God, we can only do it when we change from the thinking mind, the conscious thinking mind, to that universal mind which is ever ready to pour itself through us if only we can be still enough. Then we haven't done away with the human mind. The human mind has become the instrument through which the cosmic or God mind expresses. That is why, no matter how gifted a writer or artist or sculptor, painter may be, they still need some technical training. In other words, the spirit flows, but the human mind brings it down into practical experience. And that is why there must be practice in this outer realm. And so with us, there must be the listening mind attuned to God. There must be the impartation from God to us, but then there must be the constant practice until the time comes when the Spirit so completely takes over that nothing is necessary in the way of conscious mental work. There is a mind which is God, a soul, a consciousness which is God. And you become aware of it, you become conscious of it, only in the degree of your listening ability, of your receptivity. And it is in developing that listening ability and receptivity that the mind quiets, becomes still, and becomes an avenue or instrument through which that which we call God manifests, expresses itself. Study, read, ponder, think, meditate, but then have these moments of listening afterward so that the fullness of it can come to you. Remember, it isn't the truth you read that is a spiritual power in this world. It isn't any truth you know in your mind that is a spiritual power in this world. The spiritual power is the Spirit itself imparting itself to you, and you are not doing the thinking, you are doing the listening or hearing of it. There may not always be hearing, it may be feeling, sensing. Always remember, it isn't the truth you speak that heals. It isn't the truth you write that heals. It isn't the truth you know that heals. It is the truth that is imparted to you from within your own being. the truth you become aware of as it comes from God within. That is the Word that rolls back the Red Sea, that brings the manna from the sky, that heals the sick and raises the dead. It is not your knowledge, it is not your wisdom, not your understanding, it is God's. You become the instrument through which God works.